Greetings, I'm Linda Pence-Gunter with Beyond Nuclear, and this is the update. Last week, we ran a comprehensive story by David Barash and first published by the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation, thoroughly debunking all the many myths about nuclear deterrence. Deterrence is the most reckless spin of the dice imaginable. For nuclear deterrence to work, there must be a 0% chance of failure. Zero, because any such failure, in which a nuclear weapon or more likely multiple missiles is launched, would be catastrophic. And yet, on March 16th, incredibly, the British government announced it would actually increase its nuclear arsenal. Britain already has 180 nuclear warheads, enough to wipe out pretty much all life on Earth multiple times. But it wants 80 more. For what? The British nuclear arsenal is comprised of American-made missiles carrying British-made warheads loaded onto Trident nuclear submarines. One of the 4 UK subs is always at sea, upholding Britain's so-called continuous at sea deterrence. We have an article about this currently on the Beyond Nuclear International website. But there's no realistic scenario under which Britain would either need or, God forbid, actually use its nuclear weapons. These words, need and use, continue to litter discussions about nuclear weapons in the halls of military power, yet they at once contradict the very notion of deterrence itself, which counts, unrealistically, on these weapons never being used. So what is this about? It's all apparently part of the pompously titled Global Britain, a plan for the country's defense and foreign policy role on the world stage. It is, as Nick Dearden of Global Justice Now described it during a recent CND online rally, quote, a shocking confirmation that this prime minister is governing the country based on some sort of deluded imperial fantasy that he presumably developed as a schoolboy, unquote. America First aspirations may be fading with a change of government in the US, let's hope, but Boris Johnson has eagerly donned Emperor Trump's discarded new clothes. What this is also about, of course, is more profits to be made by nuclear weapons corporations. Unsurprisingly, these companies' stock values rise whenever there is an announcement like this. Britain has been languishing under painful austerity measures for years, well before the COVID-19 pandemic hit. The last thing it needed was to throw massive amounts of funds at weapons of death. But as Boris Johnson announced this new investment in nuclear missiles, his government also announced, without even a hint of shame, a 1% pay rise for the country's National Health Service personnel. 1% for risking their lives every day to tackle a global pandemic, working for a service already grossly underfunded and underpaid. It was worse than an insult. Fortunately, both announcements have been met with widespread disgust. And as far as the nuclear arms increase goes, apart from the immorality of this move, it's also illegal. The UK is a signatory to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which, every time something like this happens, is exposed as fundamentally too weak. Article 6 of the treaty requires nuclear countries, signatories to the treaty, quote, to pursue negotiations in good faith on effective measures relating to cessation of the nuclear arms race at an early date and to nuclear disarmament, unquote. Ramping up your stash of warheads is quite the opposite. But the trouble with signing the NPT is it's a bit like crossing your fingers behind your back. North Korea, for example, signed the treaty until it had its hands on enough nuclear technology to develop nuclear weapons. Then it gave the required notice and left. There were no repercussions. The coming weeks will show us if there are any consequences for Britain's violation of Article 6 of the NPT. Meanwhile, disarmament groups like CND and ICANN and others are mobilizing to respond to this tone-deaf and reckless move at a time when the world is embracing the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, a far better, saner, kinder, and safer path. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.